Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Kristopher Hart. I forgot my name for a minute. This week is 3 of 3, the third interview, this time with Mr. John Little of Smooth Ambler. For those of you who've been in the bourbon game for even 2 years, you'll know that there has been a emphatic fervor for Smooth Ambler MGP single barrels. I would say arguably that Smooth Ambler is one of the probably the most successful at getting their single barrels out from MGP, which is an Indiana-based distillery that has been making really great bourbon for a long time. And I mean, they've got bottles that are now trading on secondary for $600, $700, and their original retail was like $40 like 4 years ago. It's just crazy to me. So they've recently, a couple years ago, they cut back on that, switched to a Dickel product. There's been a whole chain of events. There's been some mixed results in people's feelings on the subject. And of course, now recently they've re-announced a relaunch of their MGP barrels, but at a significantly larger price. But his answer for that could not have been more common sense. I loved his answer to why they raised the price. So I think that pretty much covers everything. Rate and review the show. Please, guys, go to iTunes, rate the show, give us 5 stars, give us some feedback, and please enjoy the down-home, good old boy nature that is Mr. John Little on this week's episode of Whiskey Neat. I couldn't be a bigger fan. This week's show, as always, is sponsored by Terlato Distell Artisan Spirits. Brands like Deanston, Ledaig, Tobermory, Bains, Black Bottle, and Scottish Leader. So Todd Grube and, of course, our longtime friend Wade Woodard joins us this week as well. So on this week's episode, it's me, Todd, and Wade, and Mr. John Little of Smooth Ambler. And we kind of pick apart the recent changes in the company and everything else that's happened. And he just answered directly. He was great. I loved it. So without further ado, Mr. John Little of Smooth Ambler. Cheers. Very nice meeting you. I know we've been talking a little bit online for a little while, but and you've actually got quite the history with Wade over there.
Actually, 4 years ago, probably to this day, is when we did that TEL seminar, the Audacity of Source Whiskey with Craig Minnick.
Yeah, and a little bit before that, Wade was the one that made sure that we were doing it the right way.
Sure.
Right, double checking our labels and making sure we weren't a bunch of liars.
Well, I think that was the
criminals.
That time period that Wade was on tear. Right, he was basically he figured out how it's like when you're. When you figure out that Santa's not real, and so you start calling bullshit on everything. As soon as he figured out how to contact and look up cola labels and realized that a lot of this was nonsense, Wade started just email, and then when they wouldn't respond or they responded poorly, he was reporting to TTB.
The interesting thing about it is a lot of these companies didn't respond. So some of them knew they were doing wrong and didn't really care, but John and Smooth Ambler, as soon as I kind of made them aware, and actually I think you already had kind of figured it out on your own. You were in the process of updating your labels.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, we didn't list the state of distillation on our label. We always told the story, and when we were we're out doing tastings and promoting the whiskey, we always told people that we didn't make it and where it came from and all that. We honestly, I thought I had pegged the label. I thought we were great about it, but we didn't list the state of distillation. So the idea internally, we spoke with an attorney, and we basically just changed it. Had a new cola approved, and then changed it in line to make sure that we were compliant.
I think the transparency means so much to the consumer. And I was calling out Smooth Ambler recently when I saw there was a post. I don't know who.
Oh, I know what you're going to ask about.
Yeah, talking about the
I was going to bring this up.
And everyone I know appreciated that they just came right out and said, "This is it. We're gonna switch the juice inside, and we're being open about that, and we're changing the label."
Well, they were relaunching it, right? Because it had gone away for a little bit, and then you guys relaunched it, but using Dickel juice instead, and we're fully transparent about it.
Well, I can't tell you where it comes from in Tennessee.
Sure.
You might be able to guess where it comes from.
Sure.
Come on, Chris. You know better.
Sorry,
I can't say this.
Every single
it's some
time.
Tennessee whiskey company.
Right.
It's a big distillery in Tennessee that makes an 8488 recipe, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and so Old Scout Single Barrel, it went away in the market, but we've had it in the tasting room, and so this was an opportunity for us to bring something to market that was similar, right? Same thing, a cash strength 13-year-old single barrel whiskey, but it was obviously it was distilled in a different location. So we wanted it to feel like it was part of the family, and but we also wanted to make sure that nobody felt like they got the bait and switch, right? That it was the old label, identical to the way it was, one distilled in Indiana and one distilled in Tennessee. So
but it wasn't the old label, right? You tweaked
yeah,
it.
we tweaked it to say, instead of just saying single barrel, it says single barrel select. And of course, the state of distillation is different. So we wanted it to be enough of a difference so people would recognize it, hopefully would recognize it, and didn't feel like we were trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. And so we're trying to do the right thing. And so when people have had questions, we've tried to be online, and we've always tried to be accessible and make sure that we can, tell whether people like our products or not, and to answer them honestly and to get their feedback, whether you want to hear that stuff or not sometimes.
Well, you've been pretty good about, which there are some other brands could probably learn from, about it openly addressing things, even when there is pushback. I remember recently, which I thought you were going to bring up something else, but I think someone had set your ad settings wrong for one of your ads for Smooth Ambler, and it was basically showing up in people's feeds that were not drinkers. Like they were like, I don't drink I don't drink poison. Like I don't drink alcohol at all. And I think I talked to the other John about it, but you guys were just kind of like openly. Even the feedback you got from Big Level. Big Level got some nasty feedback at one point, and you guys thanked them for the feedback and have striven to like just openly address everything, be as transparent as possible. And I think it kind of gives it a bit more like you have a very good old boy feel to it.
The
you know
Big
what I mean?
Level thing, that's the other conversation. Those are the two great examples I thought. It's just how a brand should deal with the public. And whoever it was that responded basically said this is real hard to read, because people were tearing it up, as happens with every brand.
Sure.
And,
Fraser,
and he
right?
said, this is really hard for us to read, but we're taking this to heart. We want to put out the best product, and we're going to go back and make changes. And I thought that was great.
Well, that's me. Almost every one of those
Okay.
comments that come out there, I've decided that I'll answer those. If they're any more than just the basic, what time are you open, what time you close at the tasting room, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
It's hard to do it all the time, right? Doing all these different things, but I want to make sure that we do that, and I want to make sure that we're present when things are bad, not just showing up when things are good.
Sure.
And nobody likes to hear that their child is ugly, right? But and we wouldn't put it out there if we weren't proud of it. We also are aware of what it is. It's a young weeded bourbon, and so we're not trying to pretend like it's a 23-year-old cash
Sure.
strength weeded bourbon either. But we don't always want to hear that feedback, but we do take it to heart, and I do know that every day we are working diligently to make sure that our products are better. Not just because of that, but because we want to be better. So we're constantly trying to make sure that we're improving, and we want people to know that we're listening to them, and it surely motivates us. It certainly sharpens our focus.
Yeah, it's just it's a hard. I always feel bad for any brand. I mean, you guys, I think, arguably, admittedly, have a bit of a cult following. I mean, Smooth Dramblers is a thing for a reason. For those who don't know, a Facebook group dedicated to Smooth Ambler. But I feel bad for anyone who puts themselves out there, especially in something that's so difficult and complicated, like making whiskey, and you've got to put product out. And sometimes it's young, and it's this weird thing where you're constantly trying to improve, and not the feedback isn't always like the most constructive. Sometimes it's just nasty, like as if your intentions were in a bad place.
Yeah, I don't exactly know how to respond to that. It's certainly difficult to hear that. Very difficult to hear that, right? Because as everybody here knows, it takes a tremendous amount of work to do this, right? It's not like we just out here just whatever works, let's put it in a barrel. We don't do that, right? It's
Sure.
a lot of thought and work and time and effort and money that goes into this, and so we don't want to hear it. But you'd rather nobody gets better with having smoke blown up their butt.
Sure.
And so we want to take that feedback and try to make changes and do what we can to make a better product on everything, whether it's an Old Scout product or a Contradiction product. And or house-made, totally house-made product. The one thing that I have noticed is what's a little bit interesting in social media is that there's about 20 repeat offenders, and I don't really know exactly where they come from. That's an interesting thing from a brand perspective.
Sure.
Is that pretty much every time something negative is said about Smooth Ambler, they're on nearly every single post. I have a list of that Billy Madison. In the Billy Madison movie, where he called and apologized to one of the guys, and then the guy took him off the people to kill list.
Yeah, it was Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
I used to have a people to kill list, right? I mean, it wasn't a real people to kill
Sure.
list, right?
That's what the Facebook block feature is for.
Well, I don't want to block them. I want to make sure that, because they're not going to be, they'd only be blocked from me, so I'd only be making myself feel good. I wouldn't.
Correct. You'd only be shielding yourself.
I'd only be shooting myself. I want to see that, but there is a list of those people, and I used to keep track of it. Now it's like,
No, that's so funny.
I used to keep track of it. It's like,
I
man,
love that reference.
right? Because the people to kill list, but
I probably could guess about 15 out of 20 people on that list,
Well,
just knowing the
you're reminding me of
trolls.
other brands. There's some other brands I can think of that are every time this specific brand gets brought up, they chime in as if like I haven't seen them said anything in months or weeks. They've been a lurker in a group or HBS or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you mentioned their trigger brand, and that's what I'm going to start.
And they
calling
comment
it.
every single
And they've
time.
got a comment, and it's the most colorful, vindictive, ugly, unconstructive, and it's crazy. And me being an outsider, seeing it kind of, I'm like, dude, come on, man. Like you can find better ways of saying you don't like something without being so visceral about it.
when the reviews or the comments are helpful, right? They describe a taste that they don't like, or it's young, or they don't like the grainy notes, or it's something, it's whatever. I can't even making one up, right? It's burnt. It tastes burnt to me. It smells. When there's some criticism that if it just says this is a drain pour, this is hot garbage, like I don't know what that means.
Hot garbage, yeah.
Right.
Let me tweak the amount of garbage I put in the next batch.
I can't adjust. You can't adjust to that. What's interesting is that I think I've just really come to the conclusion that when we had Old Scout, we set this really high standard.
Yeah,
and,
you did.
And people are used to or get comfortable with some standard that you have, and when you don't live up to that standard, at least in their mind, they feel hurt, right? And whether that's a product that we make, or a computer that you buy, a phone that you buy, whatever that is, and the next one doesn't work as well as the first one you bought, and it's the new model, they feel like they've been cheated. And
Sure.
And so that's something that we're just coming to terms with, and kind of understanding that. So looking at it from a different perspective is going, oh, they just hate us, kind of thing, right? So
Yeah, and I don't mean to focus only on the negative. I mean, the overwhelming positive perspective of Smooth Ambler is positive. I mean, I think you guys are very well loved. I've been a huge fan. I've been a huge fan of pretty much everything you guys do. Between the two Johns, the videos that you guys were doing were great. I haven't seen one in a while. I don't know if you guys stopped doing that or not, but
The toilet paper one was spot on.
there's been a couple of great ones. And I had dinner with the other John when he was in Houston last time, and he's a character, man. He's he's a character. You guys seem like really, really close beyond just a work partnership.
yeah, we've been friends for about 17 years. I met Johnny right after I moved to Lewisburg, maybe the day or two after I moved to Lewisburg, and we've pretty much been friends ever since. And that's great for the most part. Occasionally we have some disagreements, right? And it's really hard to have a disagreement with someone that you work with, especially when it's really, really heated and feeling like it not enter into that friend relationship. Right?
Sure.
So I can tell you this. I guess I would do it without him if I had to for some reason, but I can tell you I really don't want to do it without him.
Sure.
When it's time for him to go or time for me to go, it's probably time for both of us to go.
Sure.
So whenever that is. Let's hope that's a long ways away.
Right.
I hope.
How's your relationship with Bernard?
Yeah, Pernodrix is pretty good. So
that's funny.
We like that. Yeah.
So, well, this is a drinking show, and you guys, I'm the only one drinking. So, let's pour a drink, and I think.
Are we starting with this? The Four Roses?
Sure, you can do Four Roses. I don't know if you know Pasha Morchetti, but he partnered up on a pick. He's a local bar owner here in Houston that's very well loved within the cocktail scene. I'm surprised he's not here this weekend or this week. But
I saw his bar manager last night.
I think who's his bar manager? No,
I totally.
Rachel?
Is Rachel the bar manager or the other one? Nicole? No. I always forget her name.
It was Rachel.
Rachel.
Did you see?
I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, beat me out.
My daughter's name is Nora, and it's driving me. Noelle. Noelle is, I thought, his bar manager. I thought she was the most senior person. Just classic, right?
So I got to ask you a question about the Barrel Proof Select from the unnamed Tennessee distillery. The ones that came to Texas were about 95 proof, and I know that distillery goes into the barrel at like 125. So how did the barrel proof whiskey at that age drop that much in proof?
You know, we don't know. The only thing that I can think of is that we have a lot of barrels in Indiana, from Indiana, that are the same way. You know, we have some barrels that, we have quite a few barrels that when we drilled, they're not, unless I guess that they went into a blend, they would be considered that, but they're lower than 80 proof in the barrel. So they feel at 122, right? So the only thing I can think of is that we've had barrels that have been in an extremely humid environment, really low floor, right, and therefore have lost alcohol instead of water through the evaporation process. And
have also pulled in alcohol if it's super, or pulled in water if it's through the outside of the barrel.
Super humid.
If it's super humid, yeah, that's what happens in France.
The only thing I can think of besides that is that there were some mistakes in the filling process, right? Some over dilution. We have barrels, so the Select was a lot of only about 180 barrels that we released, and that's a one-time thing, right? We've sourced some whiskey from Tennessee, but we haven't. We've used it in a variety of things, but in that single barrel Select, it's basically a one-time release of about 180 barrels, and we had distillation proofs, I think from about we had cask proof from about 117 all the way to like an 86 or an 87 in that same 180 barrel lot. Staggering. I don't even know how that's possible.
So they're going into the barrel just super low.
No, I don't think so. Unless there was some, the way they feel, right?
That's what I meant. Over dilution is what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's the only thing they could do. I mean, that's the only way it would work is that it was.
It just doesn't drop that much on its own, even if you were.
If you're in a regular environment, we lose about a proof a year in West Virginia at the distillery. But so how does it in 13 years? It'd only be 107 proof, right? So it's losing twice that, or pretty close to that.
Do you guys ever add water to the barrel while it's aging?
No.
Because that's a thing that happens at some distilleries where the Elabosh thing, like what Iron Root does, is because we're trying to figure out and solve the Texas conundrum, they'll check in on it every few months, and if they need to add water to it to kind of cut it down a little bit, not as a financial thing, but just as to kind of help it mature a little slower,
Well, in theory, the water is aging there too, right? Any dilution water would be that's a brandy or cognac thing. I think they do.
It is.
Yeah,
that's why they do it.
The consultant that advised them came from the cognac
You can say her name. I want to sit down
Nancy
with her.
Fraley.
I want to sit down with her so bad.
She's amazing.
Nancy Fraley,
she's been to the distillery several times, and just really recently, about 8 weeks ago, I think.
That was the only thing I could think, is that maybe you guys were kind of adding water to the barrel throughout maturation, or
no, we don't do that, and we actually would occasionally, when they were coming off the truck, we would drill a hole in the barrel when they were coming off the truck, like if we were in a hurry to get something. This is years ago, but coming off the truck, and we needed something for blending right away, we would drill into the barrel and just check the proofs, because we got a couple that were really low. And so they would never even come off the truck from Indiana, and we drill them, put a handheld density meter on there, which is not as specific as the one that the TTB uses for bottling, or that we use for bottling, but it's pretty damn accurate with about a proof or two.
And a lot quicker.
And they would be about a lot quicker. And they, 96.4, 92.4, right? Just crazy proof. So it's not like there's anything we're doing in there.
Sure.
We take pretty great pride in making sure that we don't. And of course, we wouldn't list, if we wanted to dilute it, we wouldn't have product that was 116 and then turn right around and have product that was 94.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Well, we're drinking Four Roses. Four Roses had some mid-90s proofs.
Yeah, but they said usually like if you go in for a cask strength program and you taste a barrel and it's below the 100 proof, they won't let you have it because their standard single barrel is 100 proof and they don't want people to feel ripped off.
We just did a VOS that was 86.4 proof. I think it's the single best thing that we've ever released.
Really?
Period. It's the single in my mind, it's the single best barrel that we've ever put out anywhere.
That's
so
the
good that I
14-year-old,
pulled
right?
5 cases to the side, put them in my office.
That's the 14-year?
It's 14 or 15. I can't remember. 86.4.
I think John Bussey just listed some in the Whiskey Exchange at cost.
Bourbon or rye?
It's bourbon. It's
Yeah.
it's right because our brand was built to do something different than it's doing now, right? So it's the same age as a single barrel. The high rye stuff from Indiana, not the select, but the high rye stuff from Indiana. That's 14 years old, but it's low rye. That's why it's in a VOS. We didn't want to create any more muddy water than there already is there.
So let's talk about that. So you guys built this monster brand of people jumping all over your private barrels, and even some people waxing them in store. And then they went away, and you came out with the American Whiskey 107.
Correct.
And then the recent announcement went from, well, there's 2 recent announcements, fairly recent. So then they did the Tennessee Smooth Ambler Old Scout
Barrel Select.
and then even just recently you announced that you guys were re-releasing a few. I don't know if it's just as many or if it's a little bit more limited, but a few of the brand new or the old MGP ones, the ones that people loved and are going crazy over.
It's a little bit different than that. So we started. Old Scout was originally the first lot of the Old Scout we ever bought was 40 barrels, and then we bought 80, and then 120, and then we've seen enough. Let's buy a lot. Old Scout was originally designed to be like antique shopping for whiskey. It was meant for us to go out and find, like a lot of independent bottlers, to find some unique products and to make them available to the market. We never intended for it to be really what it's done. It just, first of all, we didn't know, and we didn't have that kind of vision early on. And as that was happening, the market was really growing exponentially, and at least our business was growing exponentially, and we weren't really buying like that. We were way behind the curve in buying products. We thought over a period of time, that's why we continued to make make the products available, is that we were pretty close to making a deal for some barrels at a couple different times. It never came to fruition. So we had Old Scout Bourbon, and we had Old Scout Rye, and we had Very Old Scout, which was really only a small, it was 21 barrels. We had a bunch of different products over the years. And as those products ran out, as we were never able to make those deals happen and those products ran out, we switched. We had some American whiskey, American Whiskey 107 and the custom picks of it, and then we had this one release of the single barrel select. So we're aware that Old Scout's been pretty muddy water for a long time, some of this, and it's been confusing.
I see. Yeah.
But about 4 years ago, about 5 years ago, we got pretty smart, and we started buying lots of barrels, and it's gotten better now with the Pernod relationship as we're able to do a lot of barrel modeling, really understanding about what our needs are going to be in the future and how those brands might look in the future. And so
you were buying very young whiskey 4 years ago.
we were buying
Basically new make.
We were
or
buying
one.
new make or recent new make, right? One of the things that we did a lot was that we would just openly talk to MGP, and when they wanted to sell some barrels, we would go, all right, yeah, we'll buy 200, or we'll buy 400 or 600 when we had the money. Now it's a little bit different. Now it's all very planned out about when you're going to spend the money, and we buy it under a new make contract. But at the time, we were buying somewhere from 0 days to 6-month-old product from MGP when we had the money, when they had the product they wanted to sell. And so now we're really clear on what we want to do. So we've got Contradiction. Contradiction is getting older and better. The juice is getting more mature. We're better at blending. And we'll bring out a Contradiction Rye in the future. So we'll have those 2 products under Contradiction. And then we'll have 2 Old Scout products originally. Initially. We'll have an Old Scout 99 proof, which is the first thing that we ever released, was a 5-year-old high rye from Indiana, 99 proof, non-chill filtered whiskey. And we'll bring that product out again in September-ish, 1st of September, middle of September. And then we'll do custom picks of that same product, but they'll only be 5 years old. I say only, still really good whiskey, but it might be young for people sitting to the left of
Sure.
me. But that's the original product that we ever released, and that's what we're going to do. So our staples will be Contradiction, and then in the near future, Contradiction Rye, and then we'll have Old Scout 99 proof, and then we'll have Old Scout the custom picks.
Sure.
And then we'll also bring out some house-made stuff.
Wow.
So it gets really, really clear. And those will not be coming and going. Those products will be here.
Consistent.
They'll be here to stay, and we have a limit, not a limited, but we can do about 5,000 cases this year, 9-liter cases.
That's the roadmap. You heard it first right here on Whiskey Neat.
Oh, look at Wade. I've been looking for a co-host.
And then we can, and then those volumes grow every year thereafter. And that stuff would have, right, we were pretty good about it ourselves, but it's gotten, not to really kiss up to Pernod, but they've really made this easier for us, right? They've really made this access to capital, some help with some planning and barrel modeling. So we really feel comfortable that we can move forward and not run out of these products over the next, from now on out, really. So excited about that. And then we have some house-made stuff. If I'm dragging on, cut me off.
No.
We have some house-made stuff. We have Big Level. We know that there's been a love-hate relationship with it. Some people like it, some people don't. It's all popular.
By the way, that's a good spot to be in. When you've got a product that's all in-house and you've got some people like it, some people don't relationship versus everyone hates it, it gives you room means you're onto something. And as it matures and gets older, and as you guys continue to grow, it's only going to get better. You know what I mean?
Well, that's right. We have to remember we've only been distilling now for about 9 years, and I feel like we went to a column still about a little over 4 years ago, and I think we got pretty good then, and I think we got really good about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. But we are now making. I was telling Wade earlier, we're making about 10 or 15% of our production is rye whiskey, and then the remainder of that, which is 85 or 90%, is now split between wheated bourbon and rye bourbon. So what most people have tasted is Big Level, and that product is continuing to be made all the time. That wheated bourbon goes into both Contradiction and into Big Level. We wouldn't put it out if we weren't proud of it, but it's certainly gotten better, right? We've gotten better. We know more about how to run our equipment, and we know more about yeasts, and we're just better at everything that we do. All of our production techniques were better. And so
every craft distiller I know, when they start out, they make some bad whiskey. That's just part of the process.
There's a reason that the big guys and some of these guys sitting on this table, their stuff is delicious. They've been making it for 80 or 90 years, right? I don't think we've ever been one to sit in a room with anybody or tell anyone that we make whiskey better than one of those big distilleries. That's really not something that we've done, right?
Sure. You've only just been focusing on you.
We tried. We try not to. First of all, we don't talk poorly of anybody unless they're jerks, and then we talk poorly about them because that's kind of our specialty.
Put them on the list.
But we're excited. I can tell you this, that we're really, really excited about where our 4.5-year-old wheated bourbon that's coming off the column is. We're even more excited about the rye bourbon that's that same age, and we will actually put out maybe a barrel or two in the next 6 months of our rye whiskey that we made 4.5 years ago. It'll be a 1-barrel thing at the tasting room, just because the people who have been to the Dramblerie have been asking for it. They tasted it over about 2 years, and so we'll release some of that in the next 6 months. It's really, really exciting. It is an absolute enthusiast whiskey. It is the most rye-forward rye whiskey that I have ever had in my life. It's very much the person that helped make that recipe is Larry Ebersold. Actually, it's Larry's recipe. Exactly Larry's recipe.
That's MGP.
That's MGP. So it's his.
I know you did not just do that to me on the show. You jerk.
I was telling the audience. Not you.
So his recipe, it is briny. It is pickly like MGP's product. So we'll bring that out to the market here in the pretty near future.
Tell us about the whiskey wagon, and when is it coming to come out of Houston?
Well, before we do there, I have 2 quick questions. Going back to your barrels, how many barrels do you have aging currently, if you can share that?
We have a total of about 18 or 19,000 barrels, but that includes MGP distillate and our distillate. And some other stuff that some people don't know about, some other Tennessee distillate that nobody's ever seen before.
Sure.
So we're excited about that. I think we have about 9,000 in West Virginia and about 9,000 at Indiana. But in the 9,000 that are in West Virginia, it's about 6,000 that are ours, something like that, right? And the 3,000 of them were made in the last year. So about half of the production that we have has been made in the last 12 to 18 months.
So all of your older stock, the picks that are being done were re-released, the MGP stuff is going to be at MGP currently.
It's at MGP currently. Well, it's now in West Virginia,
right?
But it was all aged at
Sure.
MGP. Yep.
Can I ask a question about that? So you recently announced the price increase. on the Old Scout.
You're not going to get beat up because I like the way that you guys responded.
Let me frame it because we're all aware of this that there is a secondary market and that the popularity of your product has skyrocketed recently to the point that you're seeing people pay a lot, way more than retail for the product. And I'm not. This is not an attack at all. But I think it's being priced a lot closer to what I think people are willing to pay. Like we just had a Boone County pick that we thought was going to be priced at around $90 to $100.
My frustrations with Boone County had to do with a bit of a switcheroo. We were told we literally planned the whole trip to go up there and visit. We talk directly with the distributor and work all the way up the chain, and then we pick which stores carry our stuff. So it's not like a store offers us a pick. We kind of place it where we'd like to put it, and because we're blessed that way. But we were told that it was going to be 100 to maybe 120 tops. We make the trip up there. We've been planning for months. We get up there. While we're up there, there's a couple of sentences that were kind of worded in a way that led us to believe it was going to be a little bit more. And as soon as we picked our barrel, 14 years old, I called the distributor. I was like, hey, they said a few things that were a little weird that made me think that this may not be what we originally agreed upon. And then at the last minute, literally like after we'd already made the trip and came back and announced our pick, it was 175, and it did fine. We passed on it out of principle. I was a bit irked about the whole thing. I don't have a huge issue on the price as much as announcing and people knowing at 120, and then surprise, it's because we had the same thing with Lincoln Tata. It ended up being 185 versus
my point was that it sold. No, that it went. That everyone at first there was sticker shock, and then it went on the shelf, and people bought it, and it sold out right away.
Not me. I don't pay over $100 for source whiskey.
Yeah, he actually announced, because of the whole Boone County thing, you announced
No, I did it January 1st. It was a New Year's resolution. It was prior to Boone County, but
I think your post.
I bought one.
I'll look it up because I saved it. I think your post said, in light of recent Boone County news, because we had to make an announcement to the group saying that we passed on it. Respectfully, there's nothing like tearing them apart or anything. I think you had mentioned then in your post, in light of this news, one of my New Year's resolutions is I'm not going to pay anything over. But long story short, these bottles were instantly put on the groups for $350. Some of them sold $400, and even that famous wax dipped bottle I just mentioned is going for $650 or something crazy recently on secondary market. So I don't blame a producer for having to. Plus, there's not much of it left, right? So you're just kind of.
I think our posts. Look, this may come as a surprise to y'all, but I didn't get rich off the Pernod deal. In fact, I didn't take a penny out of the Pernod deal. I'm still riding the wave and seeing what happens, right?
It's been wearing those clothes all week.
So I got a good gig, right? But I didn't cash out, and I still worry about money like most every person that I know does. I've got a car payment, house payment. I'm not just sitting around with a pile of cash. So if something changed, if a bottle that I liked went from 125 to 175, it would bother me too. The reality of it is that we don't have much left. Number one. Number two, we know what it's being sold for illegally, by the way, on the secondary market, and if anybody deserves, I'm not against that, right? If somebody wants to do it, I don't really want to speak to, the legality of it. But if somebody that we know what happens, and if they're doing that, that's their business. I'm not judging them.
Sure.
What we've said before is that if I sell you a car for $5,000 and you sell it tomorrow for $10,000, that's not my business. But if I keep selling you $5,000 cars and you keep selling them the next day for $10,000, I should probably raise my price.
Sure.
And that's where we're coming from.
That's very fair.
And the stores are doing it too. We know the stores that aren't on their best behavior, that they are also aware, and they just jack up prices on the shelf.
Well, we try to talk to them too, right? Again, that's their business. We try to have an MSRP, and we have those discussions about how that makes not only their life difficult, but our life difficult, because customers necessarily don't always go, oh, wow, it's the store X.
Sure.
They think it's a Smooth Ambler thing. Like, God, these guys have raised the prices. So we raised the price. Oh, so the other thing was, right, is that we see what they sell for, right? And we had people buy bottles in our shop and then walk outside and take pictures of them and sell them for $200 or more. in the parking
I
lot.
wish you would have done that. Jack, turn the sound down. No, just screaming into the microphone.
And so
That's how I felt.
Fresh flips.
and fresh flips,
On
and
the
it would
lap.
aggravate us. And look, I understand everybody's got bills to pay, but I'm responsible not only for our 23 or 24 employees now, but for the people that are vendors.
Sure.
So I'm responsible, I guess, for because it's not just me. But I take great pride in that, and that we're responsible for about 30 families. And I can tell you, my nut's bigger than most people's nut to crack. And if anybody wants to make that extra $50 a bottle, I rightfully believe it should be us. And so that's why we raised the price.
Well, you've put a lot of time and energy, and as you said, 9 years. Well, you guys, no, when did you?
Yeah, a little over 9 years.
So what'd you raise the price to him?
120 from 125 to 175 a bottle.
Yeah, and that's not unfair.
But it's supply and demand.
It's also
to me.
announced.
If people are gonna pay it, why wouldn't the brand? Why wouldn't you charge? I mean, like I said, we've seen these bottles go for that price very quickly.
We've tried to do things for people to keep people from flipping. So now there's a 1 bottle per release limit. We take your name and put it down. All right, you bought barrel number 10,000, and this is your name, and you can't get any more. So people have done lots of things to get around that, or get around everything that we've put in place to keep that from happening. One of my favorites is they bring people have brought their grandmother, right, as a 1 bottle per person. So their grandmother, a guy brought his grandma one time, and I said, you know what? People were mad about it. I said, you know what? If this person is going to spend all day with their grandma, good for grandma.
Yeah.
Bring her on. Bring her on. She probably enjoyed spending 8 or 10 hours with the grandson. So come on. But we try to do the right thing. It doesn't always work. We're aware that some of the things that we do, no matter what, people get upset about them. One of the things that we've also done is that our regulars don't get a chance to taste our special release products, right? Because we post about them, and then a bunch of people come who aren't the regulars buying Contradiction and bourbon caramels that we sell, and T-shirts and stuff that we sell at the distillery. And so we've taken some of those things and just don't post about them anymore. We've just slowly dripped them in, put a case or two in.
That's what Willa does.
And when our
because of the whole
customers-
fanaticism.
No, I totally get where you're coming from, and I think you should be making the money compared to the fresh flippers. At the same time, though, I don't think it's good for the long-term health of the industry to have kind of your standard products being priced above $100. Right now, bourbon is booming, but eventually that's going to turn off new customers getting into the business. They're going to look at that price point and say, I'm going to spend my money on something
I
else.
see it like when I first started drinking whiskey, it was Scotch. And I would look in the case at these 30, 40-year-old Scotch, and it was like, well, I can't afford that right now. And to me, that's okay. Like, if there's a product that people are willing to spend money for, everyone, it's not equal. Not everyone can afford it. As long as there are lots of good products out there, at $20, $30. I mean, I'm okay with highly priced bottles if people are paying for it.
Let me clarify something. That's not our everyday product. That's not our regular product. That's a very special product. Our everyday products are Contradiction, which I don't know if you know, but it was at $49.99. It was at 100 proof. We reduced it to $39.99, and now it's 92 proof. And both of those were in direct responses to customer feedback. They thought the product was good, but it wasn't worth $50, so we reduced it, and they thought the product was too hot. It's one of the few times in my life that I've reduced the proof on something and liked it better. And Mark Gillespie said the exact same thing, right? You don't see that much. That's our everyday product. Our Old Scout that we're bringing out, it's going to be $44.99. And our single barrels of that are going to be $49.99. So it's not an everyday product. It's not something that we think of as we try to sell things. I know this doesn't seems crazy to people to have a $49 bottle and it be painfully low, but sometimes it is, right? Because we got a lot of people. We don't produce with economies of scale, but we try to sell and to make things as affordable as we can, right? And that's why we reduced the price of Contradiction. We were actually able to do that with the new Pernod deal. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand why there's blowback to those things. But our everyday product is reasonably priced, and we want to do it like that. My mom's a big fan of our stuff, right? She's retired. She can't afford to pay $175 bottles. She happens to know the guy that runs the place, so she gets some nice stuff from time to time. But I want everybody to be able to afford our products. It makes it better for us.
Give me 1 second. Go ahead, come in.
Thank you.
Hey, you're good.
This is great.
Oh, I know. I'm very happy with
Almost
it.
15 years old.
It's almost 15 years old, and they $45.
Only made 70 bottles, though, right?
Yeah. Low barrel.
That's pretty damn good.
Pretty spicy, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it smells that way. I haven't sipped it. Just the nose is pretty damn good.
All right, jump back into it. Yeah, I'm. The whole thing, it's hard. I agree with what you're saying, Wade, in that I think bourbon, and I've said this on many occasions, that bourbon in some ways have priced itself out of the category, and I think it's part of the reason why we've seen such a resurgence of rum and Armagnacs. You can get these crazy old Armagnacs with these crazy old rums for $30, $40, $50, and unfortunately now we are seeing a bit of a spike in rum as well, but Armagnac is still incredibly cheap. I saw a 25-year-old Armagnac yesterday at Rice for $80. So I think it's forcing people to branch outside their comfort zone a little bit, which is a good thing overall. But I don't. It's a catch-22. You can't please everybody. Either you're feeding the flippers that are causing a lot of problems, not just the fact that they're causing a bit of a headache on secondary, but they're also, like you said, your regulars aren't able to get things. I know someone in Houston who his day job as an outdoor salesman, he's not very good at it, but he spends that entire time driving all over Texas, South Texas, to each liquor store, finding bottles to flip online. Old Dusty's, Old Taylor's, and he does a really good job of it. He's made a really great living off of it, but it does kind of dry up the market. People talk about, one more thing. People talk about how HBS is 6,000 people, so all you're doing is feeding your competitors. That's not who I'm worried about. What I'm worried about are like the people who are in it the last 2-3 years that have learned what secondary is, have obsessed over Willard 12, and all they're doing is they're going through that flipping phase in their life.
Yeah, the guys that go take a picture of the liquor store and say, which bottles can I buy, and then flip? Or they don't usually say that, but they ask the question, and we know that's really what they're
really meaning. Yeah.
What bottle on this shelf can I buy and sell for more money?
I just want to know real quick, does the person that sells outdoor advertising know that they're not very good at it, or did you just tell them that without them knowing that?
Oh, he tells me, he told me, he's like I don't do anything. It's
okay.
He's I don't know that his pitch is necessarily bad, but he's told me, he's like no, this is all I do. And that's a side thing.
I just didn't know if you unknowingly just basically said to your friends at their job.
His job. Yeah,
that's funny. That's kind of what we want to do when people kill Smooth Ambler. We want to be like, yeah, are you really good at your job? Does somebody criticize you every day about what you do? But that's all right. That's
or the same way that they criticize the vitriol and poison coming out of their mouth sometimes. The hot garbage thing's a quick. Especially with the whole Mattingly thing that came up, the hot garbage thing gets thrown out quite a bit.
We signed up for it, so look, we'll put our big boy pants on, our big girl pants on.
So back to the trailer. I know this is kind of flown by. We only have about one segment left, but Wade, I'm interested in your question about the trailer as well.
Whiskey Wagon.
So the Whiskey Wagon, right? We've done pretty much the same thing for about 8 years. John or I go work the market, and we work with distributors and go call on accounts, and maybe we do a GSM, a general sales meeting. And then we occasionally go to whiskey shows. So we've done the same thing. We just feel like we need to make some changes. So we decided that Jerry Graham is a great guy. Jerry has sold a couple of different products in his life. Worked for Diageo at one point in time, and he worked for Pernod selling Lot 40. And now he is the brand leader for Smooth Ambler. So he's our liaison at Pernod, between us and Pernod, and he goes and does sales calls. So it's mostly John Foster, who started the business with me, and Jerry Graham, who do all of our selling. And Jerry had this idea that we would do something different, that we would build, there's a thing called road soda. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but it's an Airstream that goes around the country serving drinks. And so we started with this idea to do something different. And what we ended up deciding on was that we wanted to build a tasting room, right? West Virginia, where we live, is not as easy to get to as we'd like. And we live in a very small town, so we wanted to be able to take the tasting room experience on the road. And so we built the Whiskey Wagon. It has red walls and real cabinets and a real bar and 2 TVs and air conditioning. It is as much like our tasting room can be while it's on the road. It was not intended to be anything other than a mobile tasting room. And so what we've done is we're going to these things, beer, bourbon, and barbecue events across the country, mostly in the Southeast. And we're going to a few music festivals. We went to the Super Bowl. Sorry, take that out. We went to the big game. And we're trying to do things a little bit different, to see more people. It's primarily focused on contradiction and a little bit of Old Scout now. But our idea is that we're just going to go out there and do what we do at the tasting room. Welcome people to our family, bring people together, have a great time. We make these little mini drinks, have like a taste, whatever's allowed in each individual state. And I think the last event we did in D.C., we did 1,200 old fashions in the first 4.5 hours. So the idea is just to do the same thing we do at our tasting room on a larger scale. And if they can't come to us, we'll come to you. That's where it started from.
That's cool.
So follow-up question.
So tailgate, Texas A&M football game, Southeast.
I don't know about that.
There you go.
When are you coming to Houston with that thing?
Yeah.
Well, doesn't WVU play in the same conference now?
They're in Big 12.
Big 12. What's
They're in
A&M?
Big 12.
What's A&M?
A&M Southeast.
Oh, that's right. SEC.
Tell you
I'm
who
thinking Texas.
Tell you who my neighbor is because he came from West Virginia to Houston. Is Dana?
Dana Holgerson?
Yep, he's my next door neighbor.
Yeah, is he really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I won't speak poorly of Dana. We're really excited with Neil Brown. Glad to have him on.
I'm not a sports guy. Is
Not a
that what we're
sports
talking
guy.
about? We're talking about sports.
Yeah. So Dana Holgerson left WVU and came to Texas, and we have a new coach. Yeah, came to Houston. Yeah. So we have a new coach named Neil Brown, and we're really excited about him. Give him a year, and we're really excited about him leading us. My daughter goes to WVU in the fall, so I've not necessarily been a huge WVU fan. I mean, I don't not pull for him, but now that my money's going there, I feel like I have to be even further involved as a sports fan.
Well, if you bring that thing to Houston, we have 6,000 people that'll come.
6,200.
Yeah.
Perfect.
6,200. We'll break that record for old fashioned.
Perfect.
Yeah, we see, and I've beat this to death too. We see about 60 to 80 new people a week in the group, and it's just a Houston. It's open to anyone that's over 21. And I'm curious, how does Texas do for you guys in terms of? I know for some brands, Texas is second or third biggest market compared to New York or California. But how does Texas do for Smooth Ambler?
It's one of our 4 focus markets for this year and the foreseeable future. It's a very good market for us. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina are really strong. Everybody pretty much has the same ones, right? Which are California, New York, Florida, Texas, pretty much in Illinois, right? Pretty much where all the people are. But we haven't done so well in New York, and California is a long way away. So we've really focused, and we're going to continue to focus. We're bringing out some new marketing efforts, some social media efforts. They'll be in Texas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. Those are the areas that we really want to focus in. We like the Texas community. It's done really, really well for us. And it just so happens that one of the things problem with West Virginia is that there's not enough of us, and we don't have enough money in West Virginia. Y'all have the opposite problem. There's a whole bunch of you, and you got a lot of money. So we like targeting those people. So
Well, your personality fits in well with Houston. You're an outdoorsman.
Yeah, and you have a
used to
southern
be.
drawl a little bit poking out. When you talk, you kind of hear a little bit of that good old boy.
I'm from Queens. Would you ever believe that?
No.
I'm just kidding. That's what I tell people in New York. I'm from North Carolina originally, so I like to joke that I'm redneck turned hillbilly.
Sure.
So yeah, now living in West Virginia now for 17 years, I've got this weird mix of Southern behavior and some whatever West Virginia is. Yeah.
Well, I think I know the last time you were here, you were at Total Wine, and I think there was Didn't you go to that event with Doug? There was some sort of class that they did where they kind of picked out an American
whiskey barrel.
Yeah, and it's just the city's doing great. I think the state's doing great. I mean, between Beaumont, which is surprisingly just killing it, and Beaumont, Austin, and Dallas, San Antonio is kind of trying to get off the ground a little bit, but they're a little bit slower there. But and I'm basing this off Facebook, not actual sales numbers. So I have no idea how San Antonio's doing.
Well, Houston's the biggest by far.
One of the things I thought was interesting, made me think about Houston. Houston's had a little special place in our heart for a while, and I'm not really sure why. Well, I guess I can relate a little bit.
Wade
but
lives there.
That's not it. I do want to compliment Wade a little bit later. It's going to make his head big, but it's true. So we had a terrible flood 3 years ago in West Virginia, and it really destroyed our community, and people lost their lives in our community. And it meant a lot to us. We raised some money, I think about $27,000, and donated that to flood relief in West Virginia. So about the same time, Florida was being hit. Houston was being hit with the flood when you guys had that flood, and so
Which flood? The hurricane or the flood?
Harvey.
Harvey. And so it meant a lot to us. And so we did a bottle auction in northern Kentucky, raised about $26,000 or $28,000. I can't remember exactly. And we donated that to Team Rubicon, who goes around, military veterans who go around and rescue people and basically put feet on the ground. And that money was designated to be spent in Florida and in Houston, and so it means a lot to us, right? We're a small brand, so that was and it's hard for us to come up with a lot of cash, but to be able to take those bottles and auction them off and to make some meaningful impact, it feels good. I hope it made a difference in the area, and so because of that relationship to the natural disaster, I think Houston's kind of had a special place in our heart, at least in some small way.
We've got about 10 minutes left. You want to hit the rest of your questions?
I wanted to ask you, who puts together your Spotify playlist? I love the list that you guys put together. I listen to it all the time.
Johnny Foster. He is a music nut and very, very good. I don't know much about music, and so all the people that I do know who are musicians think Johnny is one of the best blues guitarists they've ever heard. The guy really is amazing, and it's his hobby. So it's his hobby and something for work with the Spotify playlist. So I don't know if you've seen them lately, but we have a bunch of them now. There's probably 12 or 15 different playlists that he has. There's kind of some hard restrictions. You can only have one song per artist on the playlist because otherwise it would assume that they're endorsing the playlist. So there's some guidelines that we have to follow. So there's a wide range of music, but they're great. So if anybody out there wants to listen to it, it's just under Smooth Ambler Spirits.
How did you find that, Wade?
I think you posted about it one time, and then I have a Spotify premium account, so there's several of the lists I follow, and
they're great.
They're just good for kind of background music, and
we've got them for all different occasions. Some road music, some redneck country music, some country from all generations. It's got a bunch of great playlists. Johnny put that together. Just thought it'd be fun. We play them at the tasting room all the time.
I'm not on Spotify much. Me not being a sports fan, I'm a huge music fan, and I'll check it out. We've got it on our. You know what Sonos is? The little...
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, those are fantastic.
Well, you can have a free account on Spotify. You just have commercials every now
and then. I can pay for it. I'm not broke. I don't mind paying for it.
You can even put podcasts on Spotify.
Amazon, my podcast is on Spotify. Whiskey Neat is on Spotify. No, there's so many music services, and we are the generation, the people in this room have gone through all of them, right? So Pandora was like the first, and then they just became inundated with commercials, and then so I'm still on the Amazon
Premium
Music.
account.
I'm still on Amazon Music. I haven't made my way to. My wife does SoundCloud and Spotify, and I haven't done any of them.
So I once worked for a French-based company. I worked for Alcatel, and one thing when their employees came over here that we could never ask them about was vacation time, because those guys take like 8 weeks of vacation. I think it's mandatory by the government.
In France?
Yeah, they have a lot of time off in August. That's right, especially August. But yeah, I think they basically take the whole month of August off.
Why? Why August?
I don't know why that is. It's a European thing. The Italians do it. When we buy,
and they still go on strike. I work in aviation for my day job. They go on strike all the time. Like as if 8 weeks wasn't enough for you to relax a little bit. You want to also just say, you know what, I'm done. And yeah, we've got to reroute people around French airports constantly.
So you've been over there for any meetings?
I have. I've been to Paris, but not for the meeting. I went to a place called Les Ambiers, which is their annual meeting on an island in the south of France. It's pretty great, and it's very productive. So all key people from all the different areas come all over the world come and meet there and discuss their planning and strategizing, and then also new brands are showcasing what they have at those events. It's great time, very very effective from a meeting perspective, and also a party. So it's a great thing to do. I went there the year after we signed, but they didn't. I don't think they had it this year.
We always have to say it's very productive when you go to a cool place. Like, no, it was a very productive meeting.
No, my goal is to go somewhere and not be productive at all. But actually, this was productive.
Now, didn't they also just invest in another American whiskey producer?
They did. I'm not exactly sure of their relationship, whether it's majority or minority. I think it's majority, but in Rabbit Hole. And so, look, we welcome them to the Pernod family. I think having another bourbon in the portfolio makes the sales people, that makes their job easier. certainly having a couple of different options, right? Being able to go in there. People love 3 or 4 options, right? So they go in there to a account and they have lots of options to be able to sell, and that's great. But it's not going to change the way we view the world. We're going to still go out there and do what we do for Smooth Ambler. We'll help them in any way that they can, and I'd like to think that they would help us in any way that they can. But certainly, doesn't change how we view the world.
Yeah, the feedback seems to be pretty good for the brands that I've talked to that are involved with Pernod. Yeah, they seem to be doing pretty well. So,
a friend told me before we did the deal, a guy who had experience working for them, who had worked in production for them, said that they are as much like family as any corporate business can be. Right? I still got to meet goals related to budget and related to sales goals and all sorts of things. But I've never asked for anything that I couldn't get. I've never asked for help that we couldn't get, and they have a lot of resources both on the production side and on the sales and marketing side, legal, financing, every bit. And so I'm one of those people. As an entrepreneur, I've always been very independent, and I'd rather just not ask for permission. I'd rather just go do what I feel like I want to go do.
Sure.
But I can't do that as freely as I used to, and some of that's probably good, and some of it maybe is not. But
sure.
I can tell you this: if I haven't had a reason to feel like I'm not unhappy with the relationship now, nor have I ever been. So I feel like we made it, and certainly I feel like we made the right call for the security of our employees and for our vendors and stuff as well, and for the brand. I think the brand's better off like it is.
Absolutely. We got time for one more question.
I kind of covered my
You're
list.
good?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I know this is kind of a hectic week and took us a minute to get here. God, it took us an hour and 15 minutes just to leave the airport. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. And, this will air next week. I'll send you a link, and you can give it over to John.
Yeah, that'd be great. Appreciate you inviting me, and I'm glad to finally put a name with a face. I know we've been friends on Facebook for a year or more, so glad to finally do that.
You, yeah.
And for Wade, Wade, I'd love to give you a lot of crap about what you do.
As well deserved.
Well, it's completely well deserved, but it takes people like Wade to keep people on their toes, whether it's from a production standpoint, making sure people aren't lying to the consumer. I mean, the reality of it is he's a consumer advocate, right? And
sure. The
world should want people like him. We certainly want people like Wade. Maybe not Wade exactly. I'm kidding with you, Wade. But we want people like him because we feel like we've always done it the right way. We've made some mistakes, but ours was never with any malice or ill intent.
Sure.
And the people who are out there trying to fool the consumer, well, every consumer should dislike those people, and it's something that we don't stand for. So, Wade,
thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Good job on that.
Do you? We talked about this off air before a couple of weeks ago, but do you want to go ahead and announce what your next endeavor is going to be, or do we want to wait on that? What you decided to begin?
I still got to put some things together and. Filings and setting up the paperwork. So
sure.
I'm not really ready to announce that.
Fair enough. We'll hold off. We'll hold off on Wade's announcement.
So how about one little promo thing? I do want people to check out the Dear Johns. We've got one coming out Friday called All Y'all, and I think you guys should really check it out.
Check it out.
It's just something that John and I, we were shooting these Dear Johns, and it just...
You write these things?
No, some of them we do, but this one was really in between sets, and we just started riffing, and it became one of the funniest things I remember us talking about.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah,
just
really
the idea of people having drinks, and we did an episode with Jared and Hemstedt from Balcones and Robert Licorice from Ironroot, and we ended up doing like 2.5 hours of drinking, and just by the end of it, we were like, we got to cut this out. We got to cut the. But that would have been like the best content to view is the camaraderie of just friends hanging out and drinking.
I know Robert just a little bit, meeting him I think at Tales was the first time I ever met him, but Jared is one of the great people in this industry. First of all, there's a lot of people in this industry that I really admire, from Todd Leopold to Jared to Larry Ebersold and Jim Rutledge, and both big and small.
Jim Rutledge was the master distiller for Roses before, just so you know.
He had that coming. So anyway, there's a lot of really great people, but Jared, man, is just somebody, and Winston too. Some people I just really admire. Yeah,
I'm a huge Winston fan. We just spent last weekend, which I know you were kind of hesitant. It could not have been a better time. We spent the entire day up there. We started doing a distill, and we're kind of running over. I'll let Jack
They
clean
took
it up.
HBS members up for a
I
day.
saw the photos on
Yes,
Facebook.
we started doing an iron root camp because there's a bunch of North Texas distillers that aren't getting a lot of love in Houston for some reason. Houston's not a great Texas whiskey market quite yet, but it's getting there. And we started doing an annual iron root camp up there, and we just spend the whole weekend up there and just distill and taste through barrels, and
That's awesome.
And we decided to do the same thing with balcones, and we spent the entire day up there, and we tasted through. We were scheduled to taste through 19 barrels, but I think by the end of it was 21 or 22, and we bought. It's going to end up being 3 barrels, but by the time I have anything to say with it, but it was a great time.
But
Great guy.
Jared and Winston and I, we have the same distributor in the UK, and when we do an event there in September, after that, we always take some time and just the 3 of us go to dinner. The place is now closed, but it was one of the best steaks I've ever had anywhere in the world. And the 3 of us just sit down and have a really thorough dinner. You know, get one Danish steak and one Australian steak and one U.S. steak, and we're eating Wagyu and drinking sherry and cocktails. It's something that I look forward to every
year.
Yeah, those guys are as good as they come, in my mind.
Sure.
I gotta go.
All right.
send my
Yeah,
me
no
too.
worries. Cheers.
Thanks.